All right, Georgia Tech, let's have a conversation. You and me. That's all it is. It's you and me, Tech fans, right here. Let's just have an honest conversation here. Do you think you're an ACC title contender? Do you think you actually have what it takes to play with Miami and Clemson and, well, I don't know who else looks like a contender so far. We know Florida State certainly is not, but that creates an opportunity for Georgia Tech because they beat Florida State head-to-head. And then they picked up a win last week because, well, it was a game, frankly, that they should have won, and they did. And now the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets find themselves inside the AP Top 25, coming in at number 23 this week. If you want to be an ACC title contender, you'll win this football game against Syracuse. That's it. That no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If Georgia Tech is legit, they will win this game. That doesn't mean that if Georgia Tech wins this game, I'm going to say, oh, they're automatically on Miami's level or they're at Clemson's level. I'm not selling my Clemson stock. I think their front four is really good, and I think Georgia is just better than quite literally everybody else in all of college football. They've been my national title pick all offseason. I'm yet to see anything that causes me to shift that particular prediction, but I digress. Georgia Tech is trying to elevate itself. It's trying to put itself in a class where it hasn't been in quite a long time, where nobody expected it to be, perhaps outside of that program going into this year. If you do that, you win this game against Syracuse. Full stop. Full stop. That's just the way it goes. There are no excuses. There's no, well, there was this, well, there was that. Nope. If you're that good, you'll go in and win this game. This is a fascinating matchup. This is a fascinating matchup. Game is going to be played in the good old JMA Wireless Dome up there in New York. And this is a tight point spread. You know why? Because Syracuse looked pretty good in week one. Tell me, if you didn't watch Syracuse in week one, what do you think Kyle McCord's stats were against Ohio? Almost said Idaho, but it's Ohio out of the Mid-American Conference. What do you think his stats were? Oh, that's right. He went for over 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was 27 of 39 passing the football. That's the good news if you're Syracuse. Game 1, win 1 for Fran Brown. And Kyle McCord, Ohio State starting quarterback last year, who was one drive away from winning the Big Ten and having a chance to play for a national championship, comes in and right away looks like the sort of guy who you want and who you need to help elevate your program and kickstart year 1 of the Fran Brown era off to a strong start. Now, Syracuse has had a reputation in the past. This could be a new era of starting strong and then kind of falling off. The interesting thing about this game for Syracuse is their schedule, one of the easiest in the entire ACC. They do have all 3 of NC State, Virginia Tech, and Miami, but there is no Clemson. There is no Florida State. Maybe now they wish that they had Florida State on the schedule. But this is an ACC matchup that is going to be highly, highly intriguing. Because if Syracuse is going to make some noise in the conference and perhaps navigate that schedule to push for an ACC title berth, then this is a game that they will win. But Georgia Tech made a statement to the entire world in week 0 against Florida State in Ireland, which is, hey, we're better than you think. And of course, it turns out that Florida State is not as good as we thought they were, which is why I come back to the importance of this game. If you're going to get to the top of the ACC, you go and win this football game. So here's the interesting thing. Last week, Syracuse got a win against Ohio, again, Mid-American Conference team, so not an FCS, but not a high-level group of 5. And they won the game 38-22. Well, that's great. That's great. You know what's not great? They allowed over 200 yards on the ground. Excuse me? Excuse me, to Ohio. Ohio. O-H-I-O. Not Ohio State, just Ohio. It wasn't even just over 200. One guy was over 200. This was a 290-yard rushing effort from the Bobcats. That has to be better. If you're Syracuse going into this game against Georgia Tech, I've got news for you. If you allow over 200 rushing yards, you're not going to win. You're just not. You need to force Georgia Tech to do what they have not shown that they can do so far, which is consistently pass the football with Haynes King. Haynes King is averaging 210 passing yards per game. They only threw it 16 times in their week 1 win against Florida State. You know why? That's all Brent Key wants to do. Brent Key is an offensive line guy. He wants to, as he says in his own words, run the ball. That's what he wants to do. You give up 290 yards to Ohio, you better not let Georgia Tech come in there and run for over 200 yards. If so, that's what Josh Pate might call a padlock stat. Game will be over. You have no chance because they will balance you to death. They will run, they will outbalance, they will counterbalance, if you will. Not only will they not try and have an even number of rushes and passes, they will have more rushes than passes if you can't stop the run. So Syracuse has to be able to force Haynes King to throw the football. And, Haynes King has done a nice job in the first couple of weeks, but he hasn't had to make too many high leverage throws. Why? Because they're running the ball so incredibly well. Jamal Haynes at running back, averaging about 80 yards a game through the first couple of contests so far, could be in for a big game. That was the case for Ohio running back Anthony Tyus III last week. He had 203 yards rushing on 16 carries. He only had a long of 46. There wasn't even a 50-yard carry in there. And he had 203 yards rushing on 16 carries. That has to be better. So I suspect Georgia Tech wants to come out and run the football, not just because that's been their identity through the first couple of weeks. They had over 200 yards rushing and over 200 yards passing in their matchup last week, but because Syracuse's inability through, granted, it's just one game. It's just one game. Georgia Tech has played 2. Syracuse has played 1. The inability of them to stop the run makes me think, yeah, they're going to lean into that strength even more. So that's the defining trait about this game. If Georgia Tech runs the ball, I don't think Syracuse is going to be able to stop them because they're not going to get pass happy. They're not going to deviate from their tendencies. They know what they are good at. They know how they want to win football games. And it's why I think Georgia Tech will win this football game. It's twofold. Number one, the rushing attack, I think, is going to be there. Number two in this matchup is that's the number of games that Georgia Tech has played. So Syracuse got the opportunity to work out some kinks to play Ohio, but Georgia Tech is going into game number 3. So all those little things that get sharpened throughout the course of a season, that get a little bit better, Georgia Tech is just a little bit further ahead than where Syracuse is. Brent Key, second full season. He was the interim at the end of 2022, of course. I also like the coaching continuity with a returning quarterback over a new quarterback in Kyle McCord, who looked great last week and could very well have a great game against Georgia Tech in this spot. But first-year quarterback, first-year head coach, second-year quarterback, second full-year head coach. I'm going with the road team here. I'm going with Georgia Tech to win the game. This should be a really exciting football game. And if Georgia Tech wins, you got to take them seriously as a team that can push to get to the top of the conference. Will they have more games to prove? Will they have more to showcase, to prove to themselves and everybody else that, hey, we're not just a flash in the pan? Yes, but this is step one along that particular path. I like Georgia Tech. Give me the Yellow Jackets. 27-23. They get it done. Plenty more content coming your way this week because, well, there are plenty more games. So tune in tomorrow. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.